So we built it. We contracted with them.
Plan for it.
And they're happy, so successful. Approached them, black. So they bought the other side.
He's supposed to be here.
They bought 45%. More on the building back, so 25.
How are
No, I know
you?
he said he was coming, or
Yeah.
Corey did, said
I just brought this, you know, away. Just got birds left.
See,
They
I-
never leave. Well, say, you know, finalize it.
that. Yeah,
What do you say? Life goes on.
exactly. It does.
You been out there? You sit.
Oh, I haven't been. Doesn't have a lid on.
How you doing?
Good. Yellow eyelash going on.
This is
Something underneath there that's small. Oh, it's your, legislative office.
Oh, they finance your budget?
Yes.
Whose birthday?
Happy birthday to you.
Whose birthday is it?
Happy birthday, big dog. Happy birthday.
I already ate my cupcake. I didn't know it was in there.
I know, I couldn't wait. It's so funny. This is so funny. My brother Carl, this is his birthday today.
Yeah, already.
So sad. He's celebrating in heaven.
Call the regular meeting of the Butte-Silver Council of Commissioners for tonight, December 7th, 2016 to order. Clerk, can we please have a roll call?
We have 10 present and 2 absent.
Okay, and let the record show that Commissioners Morgan and Anderson are absent this evening. Please rise. Commissioner Henderson, give us the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which will greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
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 Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd also like to note a moment of silence. Today is the 75 years ago day of infamy in which 2,400 Americans were killed in the Japanese attacks on Pearl Harbor. So if we can have a moment of silence and respect for the fallen. Okay, at this point, I would make a note that we will be moving the 2 confirmations from our career fire department in section 2. That would be communications 16-525 and communication 16-526 to the beginning of the agenda following our approval of the minutes from the November 16th and special meeting of November 21st meetings of the council. But at this time, I would open the microphones for anyone here tonight wishing to give public comment on an agenda item. Is there anyone out there with public comment on a agenda item this evening? Okay, seeing none. Approval of the minutes from the November 16th and November 21st meeting, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting that occurred on November 16th, 2016, and the special meeting that occurred on November 21st, 2016.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Seeing nothing on the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So at this point, we will move on to communication number 16-525. Chief Executive requesting Council of Commissioners to confer with the confirmation of Matthew Picorni as a firefighter. Chief Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Ladies and gentlemen, council, for the record, my name is Jeff Miller, Director of Fire Services.
Thanks, Tracy. Probationary firefighter Matt Picorni successfully completed all facets of his probationary period, all the administrative tasks, all of the training requirements. He's done a real good job for us. Unfortunately, he had a family vacation planned out of state prior to knowing that his confirmation would be tonight. So I told him you folks would probably see fit to forgive him. So in any event, he'd be a welcome permanent addition to our department. So I'd respectfully request that you concur with the Chief Executive's recommendation to confirm Matthew Picorni's appointment to the Butte-Silver Fire Department. Thank you.
Very good, Chief. Any questions for Jeff? Seeing none, Commissioner Foley, would you care to make a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. It's my honor to further request to appoint the confirmation of Matt Picorni as a firefighter for the Butte-Silver Fire Department. Police Communication 16-52515. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and I would urge you to congratulate Mr. Picorni upon his return to Butte-Silver Bow City County. So, very good. And next up, we have a communication 15-526. The request for council concurrence in the appointment of Ryan McCarthy to the Butte-Silver Bow Fire Department as a battalion chief. Chief Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, members of the council. If I could for just a moment, this promotional process, if I could speak about it just for a moment, we had a very, very qualified list of candidates that competed very hard for this position. You folks can know that we have a great bunch of men in the fire department that do a terrific job every day with a lot of good leadership skills. So tonight, the promotion of Ryan McCarthy to battalion chief it's quite interesting. And if it pleases the council, I'd like to just explain a little bit about the history. Ryan is a third generation Butte firefighter. His grandfather, Jack McCarthy, was a 39-year member of the fire department, which a majority of those years were spent as chief. He had a distinguished career. Ryan's father, Joe, who recently retired from the fire department after 40 years of service, retired as a battalion chief, also had an outstanding career. It's Ryan's grandfather on his mother's side, who's here tonight, was a longtime firefighter and chief in our sister city of Anaconda. So the McCarthys have a long-standing tradition of firefighting in their blood. I would venture to say that you'll probably see one or both of his boys at some point come before this body to be confirmed as a firefighter for Butte-Silver Bow. Ryan did an outstanding job in the promotional process. He will do an outstanding job for you and the citizens of Butte-Silver Bow as a battalion chief. He's here tonight. He's got a bunch of family members. He's got his wife, Jackie, and his two sons, Kendrick and Ryman, his folks, grandparents, a bunch of other family members, and a bunch of colleagues from the fire department. So I would again respectfully request that you concur with the chief executive's recommendation to promote Ryan McCarthy to battalion chief within the Butte-Silver Bow Fire Department.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Miller? Commissioner Foley?
Thank you. It's my honor to concur with the appointment of Ryan McCarthy to the Butte-Silver Bow Fire Department Chief and place communication 16-526 on file.
Okay. We in a second.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I would not only extend a congratulations to Ryan, but extend a thanks to the McCarthy family for their past and continued service to the Silver Bowl. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank the Chief Executive Commissioners for making this appointment. I'm very honored to be able to serve Butte-Silver Bow in this capacity for hopefully many, many years to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much again. Very good. Okay, we have no items to be addressed that aren't on tonight's agenda. I do have some items for our chief executive, my chief executive's report this evening. One of the things you'll see, you were given a copy of this S&P Global ratings report. I just wanted to cover it real quickly and brief here. What this is an exciting announcement that Standard & Poor's Global reviewed and made the decision to upgrade Butte-Silver Bow's bond rating from an A+ to a AA- with a stable outlook. And despite, when you read through this, what was identified by S&P as a weak economy here in Butte-Silver Bow, we do have a gradually diversified economy. And when I say diversified gradually, that is away from being solely centric on the mining industry. And we do have our two largest taxpayers, Northwestern Energy and Montana Resources, are deemed very stable into the near future, which allows you to overlook that weak economy classification. But more importantly, and of most significant note in their determination that we warranted an upgrade, is our strong management of the city county with good financial policies. The city and county improved this score because of several new policies and practices, including the use of historical trends and financial forecasts to project revenues and expenditures, the establishment of a 5-year capital improvement plan, the implementation of a new formal investment policy, formal debt management, and formal reserve policies of 16%. In addition, the Standard & Poor's Global identified and designated that Butte-Silver Bow was very strong in its budgetary flexibility, its liquidity, and debt and contingent liability profile. And so I think a lot of that thanks, if not all of that thanks, goes to our finance and budget department led by Director Danette Gleason and her staff of Steve Descharme, Wendy McGrath, who will be moving on to become our new elected auditor, Deb Alt, and most newly added to the finance and budget department, Julie Connors. So I would ask for a round of applause for those folks. I did also want to recognize our numerous department heads for working cooperatively with the finance and budget department, to our finance and budget committee members, and to our council for supporting the budgets and the budgetary items and resolutions that we bring forth before this body. As you can see now, I hope you can agree it was for good reason. This is great news, and it will save us hundreds of thousands of dollars when our bonds for the pool go out to sale on the market tomorrow, as well as on any future projects. And so you might not notice what all of these procedures and issues and initiatives and resolutions are that Danette and we bring before you right when we bring it. But this is the payoff that our community receives when we do establish that sound financial management. It's not easy, but it's worth it. So again, thanks, Danette, for your leadership in the finance and budget department, and everybody else for following along. I did have a couple of other items. One would be that earlier this afternoon, and I'm going to leave a copy of this for you guys to take a look at. The U.S. District Judge Sam Haddon upheld the confidentiality order for the Butte Priority Soils Operable Unit consent decree negotiations between the U.S. and ARCO, in which our local government is a third-party participant. I'm sure you recall back in June, the Montana Standard and the Headwaters Coalition filed a motion to intervene in these matters. And there's a lot of details in the 13-page brief from Judge Haddon. A lot of it's good information just for background purposes. It traces it back all the way to when the Superfund site was listed, and then just kind of some of the reasonings and where this order came from. But ultimately, the judge made the decision by determining mainly that the motion to intervene was untimely and that it was filed 13 years after the confidentiality order was put in place, concluding that the challenge to the confidentiality order is without merit, I quote that, and that intervention will not be permitted. As far as what this means moving forward, I do believe that the standard does have the option to submit its case for consideration to the Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. And in the meantime, it's still uncertain when these consent decree negotiations will reconvene due to the ongoing issues over access on the Parrot Tailings project between the state of Montana and Montana Resources. But when they do convene, I sincerely hope, I know I'm not gonna be here. I have not formally and publicly congratulated Commissioner Palmer and his bid to defeat me as your chief executive and starting in 2017. So congratulations, Dave, and I wish you the best of luck and any assistance I can lend to your success on behalf of the county moving forward. So when we do reconvene, as you have been at the table and kind of seen how some of these things work, I sincerely hope and would strongly encourage the local government to maintain its best efforts to keep the public informed and involved to the maximum extent possible, establishing its own standard of public involvement and exceeding the ample opportunity that's mandated by circle law that the judge refers to in the last paragraph of his decision. I thought we had done a good job of getting in as possible, and you've seen the efforts of the Restore Our Creek Coalition, CTEC, other members of the community taking a continued interest in our environmental future here, and I just hope we can keep going down those paths to keep things different here than they are under that standard mandate, because I know we can do better than that. And along those lines, not associated with the consent decree, I did feel it necessary and prudent to give an update on the environmental catastrophe, whatever you call it, at the Berkeley pit right now. There were officials from the EPA as well as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that were in town today. They visited the Berkeley pit and they met with Montana Resources officials as well as British Petroleum officials that were in town from Houston, I believe. And although nothing formal has been issued yet at this point, the death toll of the snow geese that perished in the Berkeley pit will likely exceed 3,000 in the coming days as they try and figure out how to best come up with that number. As you may be aware, the safety precautions with potential sloughing of the walls of the pit prevent them from getting in and actually physically retrieving all of the birds, which would be the most accurate way to determine a count. But they have been able to get down on some of the ramps to collect a number of the birds, and then they're using drone technology to kind of take a look at the birds that have against the shores of the pit to come up with a fairly accurate number. It's a tragedy, plain and simple. And I would offer that in hindsight, of course, it's might even be more tragic, and that I think we we could have prevented it. And when I say that, I mean specifically 21 years ago, every party that is still involved today was given what should have been a wake-up call when the 342 snow geese died in a nearly identical fashion back in 1995. And what resulted from that was there were hazing and mitigation plans that were put into place, and I would say they were followed religiously even up until the date of last week when this most recent event occurred. Unfortunately, we know that wasn't good enough now, and I think that rather than striving for the continued improvement and staying on top of the latest technologies for treatment and for managing and minimizing the risk of the pit to birds, that everyone went back to sleep again after that wake-up call in 1995. We should have been continuing to stay on top of that. And now, again, 21 years later, we're awakened by a death toll that's going to literally be 10 times as loud as the one that woke us up the first time in 1995. And you know, we like to think that things have gotten better. I know we have done better in a lot of areas of Superfund, but the pit is one of those areas where the local government has not had the involvement that it has in priority soils or Silverbow Creek. And so we haven't had a lot of say, let alone a lot of knowledge as far as what's going on there. And so, again, I say this in hindsight, but now it's pretty obvious that what was put in place back in 1995 wasn't good enough, and we did not continue to stay on top of things to make sure that we were doing everything that we could be. And the only thing that's really changed other than the death toll is that the surface area of that pit has continued to get larger and larger, providing a larger target for those birds to hit when they're flying around and run into difficulties like they did last week in the light of that storm. So I think we need to demand that more must be done with that Berkeley pit, whether it's with the bird mitigation plan or whether it's demanding that it's time to take a look at some new technologies and expedite what we do with that. Wait until the critical water level reached. Time is no longer a luxury that is on our side here. We have got to ensure that we step up the pace on some of these things. And in the conversations that I had, I wasn't part of the conversations that took place with Montana Resources at the mine, but I was visited by the EPA officials and the BP officials separately throughout the day today. What I can say is that they were in agreement, and I would say they were conciliatory, that they agreed to that in light of these stark realities that we do have to do more. Things do have to be done in a proactive fashion, not in a reactive fashion. And the good news is that, you know, what you can find out of this is that, you know, you can see it in the faces of the individuals. I know those guys and gals at Montana Resources were devastated over this. They did everything they possibly could do, albeit too late, to save those birds. I mean, there were tears shed down there. So this is not anything that's being taken lightly by our local miners here. But at the end of the day, these guys are already looking into things that they should have been looking into arguably 20 years ago when we got this first wake-up call. And I think there will be more than enough measures put in place voluntarily, if not involuntarily, that will prevent this from happening again. And you know, I guess what we need to do is we just need to make this kind of a wake-up call where we don't go back to sleep and we continue to stay on top of this. I know that the EPA, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Montana Resources folks, as well as British Petroleum, are putting together the best information they can. We have urged them and they have agreed, although I don't know what form it's going to take, that they need to get this information out to the public as soon as possible, and even maybe establish a website or social media site where they can continue to update the information as it becomes available, the number of birds that have been counted, what some of the effects were in this most recent event, and then what are the things that are going to be done differently moving ahead. So we will try and I will provide information via our website as it becomes available. I think they will be providing information more available in a more public fashion than we've seen to date. But that being said, this can't happen again. So that concludes my chief executive report. Moving into the section 1 consent agenda, do we have any segregations or amendments? Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would like to segregate item number 3, 16-518, and item number 20, 16-537.
Okay, others? Okay, seeing nothing else, Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to approve the consent agenda A 1 through 5, B 1, and C 1 through 20, with the exception of item 3, 16-518, and item 20, 16-537.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Seeing nothing on the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 3, communication 16-518, Nick Sanford, Road Operations Manager, requesting council concur with a request to extend the no parking yellow zones on Excelsior Avenue and Granite Street to improve site distances. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. The reason I segregated this is I did originally refer this to Public Works Committee, but although last Wednesday at our Public Works Committee meeting, we were speaking about the other issues about the blinking stop signs, but this was brought up as coming up the following week, which is tonight. And we did discuss it. I believe the Public Works Committee vicariously approved it, and I thought that maybe the rest of the council might be interested in hearing that as well. And I would like to, well, I can call on Nick if he has anything to say, but basically I was just going to move to change my recommendation to concur with this communication and place it on file.
Second. We have a motion to concur and place on file. Are there any questions for Nick or Dave, given that they're here? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that.
What was the other?
20.
Oh, just 20, okay. Communication number 20, 16-537, Karen Burns, Director of our Community and Economic Development Department, requesting council authorize the chief executive to sign the economic development mill levy contract with Covalite International Film Festival and Studios and Going Up Productions, LLC. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I segregated this for a couple of reasons, but mainly after we had set the agenda, Karen came and told us there was an amendment that she needed to make on the first page, as to sort of a housekeeping item, but I'll ask her if she can explain it. And then if there were any questions as to why this was done separately than the rest of the economic development mill levy money, she can also answer those questions. Thanks.
Ms. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, members of council. I am Karen Burns, Director of Community Development for Butte-Silver. The amendment to the agreement was added after I realized that who we were actually going to pay for this economic development mill levy award was actually Luchola LLC. They are a subsidiary of Going Up Productions, which was one of the applicants on this award. Luchola was formed as the entity that will actually film, produce, and finance the film of Firefly Wishes here in Butte. And so I do have the documentation of the filings with the Secretary of State from Going Up Productions that they created Luchola for that purpose. So that is noted there on the first page of your agreement on the third whereas on the very first page. Talks about Luchola. So that was the amendment. And just to touch on why we're moving this ahead quickly, they actually flew into Butte today, the production company, and they're going to start filming this weekend. And so they really needed access to these funds right away to secure all of their equipment, their actors, the travel time, all of those things. So we're excited that they're here, but their production schedule was quicker than we had anticipated in being able to get these funds out. So we moved very quickly in getting this contract finished and completed and through our process that we normally follow of having the contracts approved by the council. Then we have an invoice that would be in process at the Finance and Budget Office. And so we've got all of those in line. So hopefully that we can have a check cut tomorrow that would be an electronic transfer, a deposit into their account so they can get rolling. Dana Morgan, I believe, would have been here tonight if she would have been able to. She is the main contact for Going Up Productions and Luchola. They're very excited and they're very thankful for us in moving so quickly on getting this done. Just so that you know, we can expect the rest of these agreements to be before you on your next regular meeting on the 21st. Sherry Walsh and myself are working very diligently to get all of those done. As you realize, you did approve a lot of different agencies, so that's a lot of different contracts, but we'll get them together ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sorich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, first off, I want to say, I do support this. Project. I think it's going to be a good thing for Butte, but I am really struggling with the fairness. I believe if we give it to one, we should give it at all, and I'm afraid that we're setting precedents. I am going to support it, but I'm not in favor of it. I believe that, you know, just for the fact that, you know, these folks did kind of have an idea of what they're coming up against when we gave them the money. You know, I am going to support them, but saying that, I would make a motion that we concur and place on file as their original motion was made.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to concur and place on file. Given the preface by Commissioner Sorich, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along the same lines as Commissioner Sorich, Karen did, and I concur with Commissioner Sorich as well. I do support it as well, and we did discuss this in economic development earlier tonight. Karen, did the folks with this contract, did they discuss with you earlier? They did say they had about $80,000 of their own investment. Did they discuss that with you?
Karen?
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Purdue-Dolan, no, I was not involved in any of the conversations with any of the applicants for their funding approvals.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious. Thanks.
Good. And I don't have any knowledge of that either. Otherwise, I'd weigh in. Anything else? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We already covered section 2, so please take note of the following 3 resolutions referred to judiciary. And at this point, is there any public comment on matters that were not on tonight's agenda?
Or everybody at 2601 Grand Avenue. Not really a comment, just a question which you hopefully you can answer when you get the calendar or minutes. I don't see the SARTA meeting. I believe they have one the 13th, but I'd like confirmation.
It will be the 13th, Mr. Bandra. 6 o'clock at the Emergency Operations Center. Any other further public comment? Seeing none, we'll turn our attention to the calendar of other meetings and events. Does anyone have anything else to add on that? Commissioner Palmer?
I would like to add one more. On December 12th, Monday at 5 o'clock, the Economic Development Committee is meeting with the T-Bid Board in a joint meeting at the Chamber of Commerce building at 5 o'clock. If anyone's interested.
Okay, 5 PM, December 12th at the Chamber with the TBID. Commissioner Shaw.
Thank you. And I'd like everyone to please stay a little bit after because Tracy has something for us to sign on the election canvas. Thank you. So if you'll just stick around for a minute, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Nothing further, Commissioner Shaw.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
I'm sorry, Karen, I just. Because when we came through this deal, how was supposed to happen, they knew it would be short of money. The deal, these seats that they were gonna front them with 10 grand. Yeah. Okay. And my only concern, because there's, my concern, next year somebody comes, we need the money right now. We need the money.